IVM.
Hello and welcome to episode 93 of the Edges Sledges cricket podcast, and it's just moments after India have clinched the ODI series against Australia. And in all the excitement, I've got my two co-podcasters with me. I've got Varun from Singapore, and I've got a birthday boy with me as well, Ashwin. Ashwin, happy birthday, man. How's it going?
All good, man. Thank you. What better birthday gift than to have a Rohit century and a Kohli almost century take India over the line. That's the perfect start to the day for me, but thank you.
Yeah, I know. You woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you were like, why has Australia decided to bat first? And you were like, this is set up for a Kohli masterclass. It wasn't quite that, but close, right? So a little birthday gift from the Indian cricket team to you.
Who else gave you a birthday gift? Steve Smith's last ODI century was on 19 Jan 2017. And his next ODI century is on 19 Jan 2020.
See, that's not something I'm happy about. I'm more happy about Rohit's century. I don't want to be celebrating Steve Smith's century on my birthday. But if it's in a losing cause, I'll take it.
10 centuries a year, so that's not really a birthday gift.
Yeah, fair enough. Like I said, Steve Smith was in a losing cause, so I'll take that one.
So awesome stuff, guys. So obviously, our listeners, you know that India has won the ODI series 2-1. But let's start from the top. At the beginning of this week, on Tuesday actually, the first ODI game was to be played between India and Australia. We thought it was a slightly meaningless ODI series, but everyone was still looking forward to it because it was the kind of two full-strength teams, two of the big boys playing each other. And it started quite badly for India with a 10-wicket loss against Australia. I mean, we got absolutely thrashed, and it was a little bit like, I don't know, when a team gets promoted from the little league to the big league, they're trying to find their feet. And it was almost like India had been playing the West Indies, the South Africans, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and suddenly they found themselves a little bit in the headlights. So, Ashwin, your thoughts on our 10-wicket loss and how much did that hurt?
Yeah, it hurt a lot, right? It was really difficult to absorb. Obviously, being the Indian cricket fans we are, we immediately start questioning everything and every player and every decision. And I think you summarized it really well, very interestingly. It was a bad day in the field because we hadn't played against high-quality opposition in a little while. And it took one game to kind of get back to it. I mean, Australia is a top-notch side. They won 3 back-to-back ODIs the last time they were here a year ago to win a series 3-2. So, I mean, you were the one who predicted a 4-0 win in a 3-match series, even if you said that's facetious and you were going for 3-0. Australia's a quality side. So it's not that you ever want to lose by 10 wickets, but Finch and Warner just had an outstanding day, and it took one match for our bowlers to get back to the level they need to be at.
Varun, let's hear from you on the 10-wicket loss. What for you was the main reason for this? And don't say Kohli's batting position, because we're going to discuss that in depth.
Yeah, no, it won't be Kohli's batting position. We'll talk about that later. But I just think the middle order lost their way. I mean, India was 134 for 2. We lost our second wicket in the 27th over. And after that, things just started crumbling. So it was a little bit sad. I think the middle order collapsed. In ODI cricket today, 255 is just not nearly enough. I mean, even 10, 15 years ago, it was not enough. But then to lose by 10 wickets, I think it was a real wake-up call for the Indian side. And I was, debating later. I was thinking India's got the highest percentage of wins in the last decade across formats. What's wrong with our team, etc. But as Ashwin mentioned, I think the problem is when you've got just 4 teams dominating cricket over the last decade, you really need to step up and you play these guys. And so I think it was a really good wake-up call for us.
Yes, as you say, a massive eye-opener for us. But why couldn't we failed to take a wicket completely? So why did this fantastic bowling attack, as we saw in the next 2 games, just completely fail to turn up on that day, Varun?
I don't know, DJ. Actually, it is a good point. I think Finch and Warner completely dominated us. It reached a stage where I think the bowler's body language was not looking that good. India's not used to not picking up early wickets. But I do have this theory where I now believe, and let's see if it holds true, right, over the next 12 months. I do think Bumrah is going to take less and less wickets. And so what that means is that because the batsmen know he's such a great bowler, they're going to play a little bit cautiously against him. It happens with all great bowlers at some point of time. Their wicket-taking ability goes down because batsmen get so cautious. And so for me, Bumrah will need to have to kind of take up that challenge and come out of it, as all your McGraths, Warnes of the world have done. What is surprising is with Bumrah going wicketless, I thought the other guys would start picking up more wickets because people would be less cautious. But in the first ODI, that didn't happen. So all round, I think it was a poor bowling performance.
Ashwin, did that have anything to do with our team selection? I know there was one of your favourite players who made the first ODI, but not the next two, Shardul Thakur.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I think that becomes a choice on, do you want to pick we talked about this a lot, but do you want to pick a bowler who can contribute a little with the bat, or do you want to pick a quick bowler for the out-and-out quick bowling ability? And again, like I said, full credit to Shardul for stepping up with the bat. I think it's a little bit different in a 20-over match when he has to contribute 4 overs and can come in and hit some big sixes. I think in a 50-over game, they went with the right call and backed Saini for the next 2 games.
Yeah, terrific point actually with the distinction between 4 overs and a full 10-over spell. Of course, Shardul looked good as a batsman but couldn't quite cut it as a bowler. But the other thing we spoke about last week, guys, and this is the big topic, and we've been getting loads of tweets about all of this, and it's Kohli's batting position. And we spoke about this in the context of T20 cricket when Kohli was pushing himself down the order and stuff. But to accommodate KL Rahul, who was in excellent form, Shikhar Dhawan, a left-hander, and of course the fantastic Rohit Sharma, the first ODI, Kohli came into bat at number 4 after Rahul and Shikhar had put on quite a nice partnership. Rohit got out early and he got 16 off 17. It wasn't quite a big innings, but it became such a massive talking point about how the world's best number 3 was batting at number 4. And so I personally had no issues with it. I thought that he was batting for the team. The team came first. He said, okay, I may be a good batsman at number 3, but I will also be a very good batsman at number 4. But the backlash to India losing a game in which they experimented, I thought was quite, probably a little bit over the top. Because it was, as we said, in a contextual series in some ways where there was nothing at stake really. And so Kohli thought he'd go to experiment. But we saw that experiment unravel and we saw it, we backtracked quite quickly from it. Kohli came in at number 3 and Shreyas came in at number 4 in the remaining ODIs. So let's talk about the different combinations that we talked about. We talked about Kohli batting at 4. So Varun, I'm going to come to you on this first because we spoke about this was it nearly a year ago or 2 years ago when India were in England and we said Kohli should bat at 4 and Rahul should bat at 3. So let's hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, DJ, in fact, a year ago, I was the one who kind of said that Kohli should do this. It was keeping in mind a very niche that, for the semi-finals or knockout games, I think Kohli should be batting at 4. But having said that, Kohli himself alluded to the fact that the team doesn't do well when he bats at 4. He doesn't do well. I mean, here's a guy who's hit, I think, 150s in just 236 innings. That's almost, 1 in 2 innings he's hitting a 50. And that's not even taking out his century scores. Or actually, I think the stat is he's hit 150 plus scores in 236 innings. So for Kohli to come at 4, I think I was reading somewhere his last 10 innings at 4, he's not hit a single 50. It just means it's not working. And so no matter what we think, I think if Kohli himself doesn't believe that that's the right position for him, I don't see India pursuing that.
Ashwin, I wanted to quickly get your thoughts on that. I mean, Kohli did bat at number 4 in the successful 2011 campaign. There's obviously the case for having a flexible order that he comes in slightly later if a wicket goes down, I don't know, in the first 4 or 5 overs, and he comes in at 4, or if it's 15 overs, he comes in at 3. So let's talk about being flexible about our batting order and whether you think that is an option India can go with.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough question, man. I think part of me says, don't let the world's best number 3 batsman bat anywhere else. Part of me says, and Varun, let me just address what you were saying with stats though. His average is 59.7 in all ODIs. At number 3, he averages 63.5. But at number 4, he averages 55.2. So I guess the question is, and yes, you're right about the last 10 innings haven't been as good. His percent conversion to 50s is not as good, etc. But to average over 55 when most batsmen in the world can't do that. I think the question is Virat? It's a strange kind of economic situation, but it's not the question of, it's almost an opportunity cost type question, and I'm struggling to articulate this, so let me try. It's not a question of, is Virat best suited to bat at number 3? Is Rahul, Shikhar and Rohit a strong enough top 3 and Virat still quote unquote good enough and better than all our other options at number 4. And it's a weird way to think about it, but that's where the flexibility comes into play. Depending on match situation, you don't want Virat walking in after 35 overs are done. So if the openers put up a big partnership, you let him walk in earlier. And that's the fluidity and flexibility I think can benefit the team. But it's a really tough question. I don't have a good, simple answer to your question, DJ.
So obviously the one thing we were trying to look at with that number 4 move was to address the inexperience, so to speak, in that middle order with Shreyas and Pant and other players coming in that middle order. But the other thing, of course, we were doing by pushing Kohli down to number 4, him pushing himself down to number 4, was accommodating Shikhar, Rahul and Rohit at the top. And obviously we've had that discussion about there being 3 openers, and it wasn't 3 openers, it was 2 openers and a number 3. So let's talk about the man who's kind of caused that change in batting order a little bit, and that is KL Rahul and his fantastic form. So KL Rahul batted at number 3 in the first game. He then batted at number 5 in the second game, and he opened the batting today. So Ashwin, I'm going to come to you on this one. Does Rahul know what he's doing? Because I mean, he's batted in 3 different positions in 3 different games. It's showing his versatility, but is it helping his game, and are we using him properly?
So part 1, I'm not sure it necessarily is helping his game. Part 2, I think we are using him properly to the extent that he's shown just how versatile he is, right? So it's probably helped his case to show that he belongs in the team. And oh, by the way, you're just talking about batting position. Don't forget that he stepped up to wicket keep as well, right? So to be your wicket keeper and a guy who can open, come at 1 drop or come at 3 down is just outstanding. So I think he's done the best he could possibly do given the situation. Yeah, he didn't have a great outing in the 3rd ODI, but just showing his versatility, showing that he has the ability to step up and deliver what the team needs him to do will give him a huge amount of credibility with management and the captain.
Varun, I know there was another Rahul that we were all massive fans of who would do whatever the team asked him to do, and that was Rahul Dravid. But Pant was injured, and Ashwin's already briefly alluded to that. And Rahul stepped in to keep wicket. He looked okay. And then Shikhar was injured in the 3rd game, and Rahul, who'd kind of played a fantastic innings in the second ODI of 80 of 52 balls to push India to 340, a big score, was then asked to open the batting. So let's talk about Pant first, Varun. And I wanted to come to you on this because out of the 3 of us, you're probably the biggest Rishabh Pant fan. Disappointed by the 1 game that he played and the 1 innings he played?
Yeah, before we come to Pant, did you have to share with you a quote that Ashwin sent me in the morning? And it said, when life gives you Rahuls, make sure it's a Dravid and not Gandhi. So I thought that was a great quote. And
it wasn't from me. I stole it from Twitter. So let's just be clear. I'm not taking credit.
But I was very happy with that line. But yeah, so Rahul Ashwin has spoken about, I think he's done extremely well. He's someone you can't overlook, and his form is great right now. So much so that the team has to play him in whatever position. When it comes to Pant, yeah, look, man, he's been disappointing all round. I don't think he's been getting off to the starts he wants. I don't think he's creating the finishing that India wants him to. So my view is actually a bit harsh, where Sanju Samson doesn't seem to be an integral part of this team. Rishabh Pant does, but he's just not up to the mark. I have a feeling Rahul is kind of smelling a golden opportunity here, where he's saying, hey, if I'm good with the gloves, and if I'm being able to bat at different positions, I actually think Rahul could own this kind of wicket-keeper batsman position. And think about it from a team perspective, it allows you an extra batsman to play at either 3 or 5. It allows you to play probably Pandya and Jadeja without worrying too much about your batting, solves your bowling issues. So I think India's onto something here. It's sad for Rishabh Pant. I'm a massive fan, but remember, guys, he's only 22. He's got a lot of time, and I actually think some time away from international cricket might actually work for him.
So all of a sudden we have a situation where KL Rahul, who was being panned a little while ago, is now suddenly the golden boy of Indian cricket. He's keeping wicket, he's opening the batting, he's batting at number 5. Albeit he might
just what happens. Yeah. This is just what happens as Indian fans, right? Suddenly, I remember 3 months ago, I was like, Rahul needs to go. You were like, either his bat is too heavy or he's wearing too long sleeves.
His sleeves were too long. It was Rahane whose bat was too heavy.
Yeah, Rahul's sleeves were too long. I was criticizing him. He keeps getting bold. And now we're like, Rahul is a permanent fixture in the team. This is just the life of an Indian fan.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? The ups and downs of it. But I think this frustration with Rahul, and I was thinking about this the other day, is he's so pleasing on the eye when he's in form and batting well, right? It's a little bit like what the frustration that I had with Rohit Sharma as well a little while ago. He looked so good. It looked so easy for these players. Like it's the Ian Bell problem almost, where you look so pleasing and easy on the eye that when you get out, it looks like it's a lazy shot or you're not trying hard enough. And so that I think is one of the things that Rahul suffers for. He's a very nice batsman to watch. But of course, I mean, it's great for him. I don't know whether it's the end of the road for Pant. Of course, he had that concussion in the first game and he was out, and Rahul really did take his opportunity, grabbed it with both hands. So we'll have to see how that situation develops. Of course, Shikhar is injured as well, who would be the other person competing for that opening spot. So I think versatility and flexibility is the name of the game, and it's something that Kohli definitely likes. So I think Rahul's going to be one of the first names in that squad actually to Australia for the World T20. So I think that was the talk about the top order and the first four. But Ashwin, I want to talk to you about Manish Pandey very quickly. Obviously, you pointed out his value in the field, and he plucked an absolute stunning catch in the second game to get rid of David Warner. But do you see Pandey sticking around in the ODI setup? Or is it time to bring in perhaps somebody like a Shubman Gill or a younger player who we think could, or a Surya Kumar Yadav, for example, who could actually step up into that middle order role?
Yeah, I think this is a really tough outing for Manish Pandey because he's had a decent run lately. He's had really, really strong domestic performances. But if you think about this 3 ODI series against Australia, in the first match he didn't play, right? I don't think he played the first match. Yeah, he didn't play the first match because Pant and Rahul were both playing. He came in for the second match, had one bad outing with the bat. So did Shreyas Iyer, so did others. So he had a bad outing. And then in the third match, he didn't need to bat, right? He basically didn't spend enough time in the middle to add enough value. I think he made 8 of 4 or something. So not enough to say he's had a bad run, but certainly not enough to say, hey, let's persist with this guy in the future. So you really feel for him. I think he's stuck in a position where, the number 5 slot is tricky, man. If 3 wickets fall early, Manish is exactly the kind of player you want to walk out. More often than not, the top order does fire, so 3 wickets fall by the time there's only 8 or 10 overs left, and you want somebody who can hit bigger than he can to walk out. So I do not think they'll continue to persist with him, but I feel bad for him because I think that would be unjustified that he loses his spot.
Varun, and I'd love to get your thoughts on Shreyas Iyer because he had a bit of a quiet series until the end, and they seem to use the short ball against him quite a lot. And I thought he didn't look that good against the short ball, and it worried me a little bit because we're going to Australia for the World T20, and the pitches have a bit of bounce in them. Do you think he's going to be able to cope with that, or is this a weakness that opposition are going to look to target?
Why is it that every middle order batsman that I like can't play the short ball, and why do you point it out, like Shreyas Iyer and Suresh Raina?
Yeah, but I mean, they are good. They're great batsmen, but I don't. I can remember Shreyas getting caught on the boundary hooking as well. I think it may have been the West Indies series or the Bangladesh series. And I mean, today he batted nicely, backed away and kind of cut stuff over point. But he still didn't look that comfortable against the short ball. So is this something that we need to be worried about, really? And that's my question. Do we need to worry about it, or is he going through a bad phase?
No, I just think the last couple of games he's not been himself. So I think let's put it down to a little bit of, not the best form. I think if you have spotted some weaknesses in the short ball, it's good because it's early in his career. He needs to sort that out, right? In 6-8 months, the team is going to Australia and the short ball will be targeted at him. And number 4 is a crucial position in T20s as well. So I hope he sorts that out. I still personally feel it's early days. And I think Shreyas is actually somebody who's here to stay in the middle order for India for a while.
Absolutely. And I guess the point is always that with someone like Shreyas Iyer, he is young and he can always make a comeback into it. Plus, he was playing bowling of a slightly higher quality than what he's used to playing. I mean, if you're playing a 130 kmph bowler and suddenly go to 150 at Mitchell Starc coming over the wicket into your ribs and into your head, it's a slightly different proposition, isn't it?
And it is, DJ, That's a really good point because Shreyas Iyer came into the team the minute the World Cup finished. Since then, we've gone to West Indies. We've had West Indies, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and Bangladesh tour India. And you're right, this is the first game that he has played against another top 4 side. So you're right, absolutely. I think the bowling quality would make a big difference. But it's good. It's good he's getting that experience now.
Absolutely. And just the last bit that I wanted to speak about before we move on to the bowling, guys. And maybe, Ashwin, I'll come to you on this. There was a lot made about Kohli versus Zampa. I mean, all the talk before this deciding ODI was, is Zampa going to get him out? He's got him out 5 times. And has Kohli got a weakness against Adam Zampa? Do you think there's a real weakness, or is it much ado about nothing against leg spin for the world's best batsman across formats?
Yeah, I don't think there's a real weakness against leg spin as a whole. I think Zampa has gotten the better of him a few times. But again, it's not that Zampa's dismissed him 5 or 6 times for 8 runs or 10 runs. He gets him out, but he gets him out after Kohli scores a decent number of runs. So I don't think it's always nice, I think, for the media and for us and for the players, honestly, to cultivate a little bit of a rivalry. Because I know you notice in the third ODI, as soon as Rahul got out and Kohli walked in, within an over or so, Zampa was on. And so you like to see that. That's healthy for the game, for the players, for the sport. But I don't think anything really to worry about. I'd be more concerned about Iyer against a short ball than Kohli against leg spin. No major concern for me.
Absolutely agree with that. And while we're talking about wrist spinners, let's talk about Kuldeep Yadav, man. How well did that guy bowl in the second ODI, just changing the game with those 2 wickets? Smith, at one point I was like, you'd back the Australians to get it from here. You've got the world's one of the world's best batsmen, Steve Smith, at the crease, and he bowled him with Smith on 98. So absolutely incredible scenes. Varun, your thoughts about Kuldeep?
Yeah, I'm really glad with that. Kuldeep took 2 kind of crucial wickets in the middle of the innings when they were cruising. He got Smith, he got Carey. And the Smith dismissal was great. You could see how frustrated Smith was with himself. But I think the great thing is Kuldeep keeps kind of plugging away at the batsman. He doesn't give up. He gets hit. It's been a tough last 1 year for him. But honestly, the guy's got talent and we need to keep grooming him.
I think the Indian bowlers really came back well. If the fans had such a big setback after the first 10-wicket loss, which it keeps ringing in my head even now, the 10-wicket loss at the Wankhede, no less. But I think apart from the spinners, I think our quicks were terrific. We had Saini come in for the second game. We had Bumrah. We had Shami and Varun. Did you watch those Yorkers, man? Because
I did.
They were
just phenomenal. Every time those Yorkers were being bowled, my WhatsApp was lighting up. People are like, I love watching Shami. Ashwin watched the highlights and went crazy. I've got other friends who were just waiting to watch Shami in the second half of the innings this time. He's done really well. And DJ Navdeep Saini is also bowling really good. I think we just need to make sure we groom him. He's not an Umesh Yadav or Varun Aaron type of situation, which we spoke about. But DJ, tell me your thoughts about what I mentioned earlier on this whole Bumrah and not picking up as many wickets, because this is what happens when you become the best bowler in the world.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think bowlers, when they get to the level that Bumrah have got to, mastery in a limited overs game as well as the test game, people are looking to play you out, right? They're saying, this block of 10 overs or this block of 4 overs, we're going to look to score at 5 and over. Or in a T20 game, we're going to take a run a ball and we're going to attack the rest of the bowlers. So what that translates into is that while Bumrah they're not taking any risks against Bumrah. He will get wickets off good balls, but he won't get what are known as junk wickets, right? So his wickets may actually go to someone like a Shardul, who people see as easy prey, and they're like, okay, this guy, Bumrah's done, he's got 3 overs, we're going to have to attack from the other end. And that, I think, is what you're alluding to, right? We did to Malinga for a few years before Kohli got the measure of him. So
absolutely, because Bumrah has taken 1 wicket in 3 games. And I know he's just come back from a long rest, from injury. He was looking good to me, but 1 wicket in 3 games, that's not the Bumrah we know.
No, but it's the economy rate that you need to look at, right? In those circumstances. And what have his economy rates been? So today it was 3.8, right?
Yeah.
He didn't pick up a wicket, but he's bowled at 3.8 in a 10-over spell.
Yeah, I think the previous game was at 3.49. Basically, that's what both of us are saying, that the economy rate is great. He's putting pressure. He's not maybe going to get the wickets, but the other guys are, and that's what Shami, Saini, and everyone's cashing in on what what Bumrah is setting up for them.
Plus, I mean, they are good bowlers in their own right. We mustn't take the credit away from them in the sense that, I mean, that those Yorkers from Shami, man, I think I put a tweet out saying, I don't think I ever thought that that Indian pace attack would actually bully Australian batsmen with pure pace. And it just warmed my heart so much to see that happening. There were bouncers followed by Yorkers. You've lived through the 90s, man. You remember what I mean. I mean, you have that, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like whenever you shadow batting, it's your shadow batting problem.
It's the quick bowlers from Australia that have shaped my shadow batting where I edge it and it goes to slip and I walk off. But
just for our listeners who are new to this, Varun actually, most people when they shadow bat, they like the practice of forward defense or they'll hit a six. Varun, when he shadow bats, goes onto the back foot, is squared up, the ball takes the edge and goes to gully. And then he takes his gloves off and starts walking back to the pavilion. We've tried to get him to put a video out of a few times, but he's refused to do that. I mean, that's what the 90s mindset was, right? Just seeing...
Yeah, you wake up at 5:55 a.m. on a cold winter night, or cold winter day in Delhi, and that's what you're watching. You're watching India's top 5 batsmen all getting out the same way. So it almost nightmare scenes for me.
Yeah, incredible stuff. But Varun, just before we go to break, and guys, we have a fantastic interview lined up after the break. We're going to be talking to Melinda Farrell about the India-Australia series and loads of more stuff about her stint at Cricinfo and stuff. But I just wanted to talk to you, Varun, and Ashwin's had to run off because he's actually got to get to his birthday party and he's got a friend picking up. So I'm actually glad he isn't here for this bit. But Varun, the last point before break is the BCCI contract list came out. And of course, your favourite was on there, Kedar. Ashwin's favourite was on there, Shardul. But there was no MS Dhoni. So we talked about it being the end of the road for Rishabh Pant earlier in the show. But is it also the end of the road for MS Dhoni, the main man?
So first question I have to ask you is, does this mean the contracts doesn't necessarily mean another player can't come in, right?
No. It just means that you're centrally contracted and you get paid a certain amount. Yeah.
So I think it was a bit shocking. I think everyone kind of was just, they just couldn't believe this has happened. Even from Harsha Bhogle to people like us, everyone just in shock. But having said that, I don't think any of us are expecting Dhoni to make a comeback for the next 3 years. I don't think we're expecting him, to get a central contract. Just the more I think about it. So I think the fact is he's going to play the IPL. That IPL is going to determine whether India feels he is ready enough to go to Australia for the T20 World Cup. And that's it. I wouldn't be surprised if an ODI retirement announcement came out soon. But if you sit down and really take emotion out of it, there is no reason for BCCI to award him a central contract.
Yeah, and equally, what is the reason for MS Dhoni to come back now and play another game after the IPL? That's the bit that I slightly struggle with. I mean, what would motivate somebody like him to come back and put on the gloves and put on the pads and go out and bat again for India? Because, I mean, he's got nothing to gain and, I mean, he's only got more stuff to lose. So, I don't know, he's already had people on his back for that run out in the semi-final. Do you think he's got it in him for one last hurrah? I know as a fan of Dhoni and I'm biased and I would like to see him back because I think he's fit enough. He's probably got something to contribute to the team in the sense of tactics as well as his keeping. But I mean, realistically, is that going to happen and why would it happen?
I think sometimes what happens is, and I kind of watched Yuvraj Singh towards the end of his career and I felt for him because I think what happens is as a sportsman who has delivered so much, I mean, both Yuvraj and Dhoni, right? I just think it's very difficult to accept to yourself that you can't do it, right, anymore, especially when you've done it so much in the past. So I think with Dhoni, what's going to happen is he's going to have to assess for himself, does he genuinely believe he can do this? Because there's no doubt about his keeping skills, there's no doubt about his cricketing mind or brain, but he is going to come in that situation where India is going to need like 10 runs and over to win. And I think what the IPL will do for him is it'll just give him, both from a mental and physical perspective, the ability to realize himself whether he's ready for it or not. If he's not, I think Dhoni's the kind of guy who will just not make a comeback. If he feels he is, again, Dhoni is the kind of guy who will just walk into the 11 if he says, I'm ready. So it'll be interesting, but I think a lot rests on the IPL. I think he's started practicing in the Jharkhand, with the Jharkhand Ranji team in the nets, I believe, and starting to get ready for IPL. And actually, Ravi Shastri said the same thing, that he's going to start prepping, he's going to play the IPL, and how he does in the IPL will determine whether he gets picked.
And to be absolutely honest with you, my dream scenario for an MSD retirement would be for him to win the IPL 2020 with the CSK, maybe beating the Delhi Daredevils in the final. I don't know. I'm conflicted there, but maybe it's a runners-up trophy again for him. I don't know. But basically, MSD in the IPL 2020 final, lifting a trophy or getting a runners-up medal and then just walking out into the sunset. That's it. Because he is the IPL for a lot of us, right?
Yeah, the challenge is, DJ, though, he will not stop at the 2020 IPL. And so that's where it becomes a bit of a catch situation where this is not going to be his last IPL, but it is definitely going to be his last T20 World Cup. So, yeah, it's not an easy one. I just hope that he does it being true to himself.
Yeah, and I'm sure he will act in the best interest of the team that he's been part of for so long. So I don't think he will drag himself along if he doesn't feel he's up to it. Anyway, guys, that is the first half of the show. It's been a fantastic win for India after the depths of that 10-wicket loss. Team India has bounced back and won 2-1. We've had a fantastic chat about all the stuff that's gone on. And we will be back after this break with an interview with Mel. So guys, stick around. It's going to be an absolutely cracking chat with her. See you after the break.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors for the week, Storytel and Intel. Sponsors make this stuff possible. Please shout out to them. Let them know that you appreciate them paying us money. Also wanted to remind you all that we have an audience survey going. The audience survey is only going to be up for another couple of weeks. And I'm frankly disappointed. Even though 3 times the number of you people are listening to us as the last audio survey, only half of you have filled it out. So yeah, I mean, come on, please get to it. ivmpodcast.com/survey. We want your opinion to matter when we decide what we're going to do in the future. And I'm sure you want yours to matter too. So please do fill out the survey. A quick note, one of our favorite shows, States of Anarchy, hosted by the awesome Hamsini Hariharan. This show is going to move to a fortnightly schedule starting 21st January 2020. Keep listening to it. It's a great show on global affairs, foreign policy, and more. On Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus talks to YouTuber, actor, and comedian Sahil Kattar. Sahil talks about the discoverability of artists through YouTube, playing Syed Kirmani in the upcoming film 83, and watching Cyrus on TV while growing up. On Golgappa, host Tripti is joined by Girija Godbole. She speaks about how acting and theatre shaped her as a person. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet is joined by Chitra Subramaniam from Cross Films and by Rahul Sarangi from TVF to talk about the export quality of entertainment. On the Empowering series, Zarina is in conversation with the host of Top Retail's Madhuri Advani. They talk about storytelling and ongoing issues in our country from CAA, NRC, and protests. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ayushi and Ritasha are joined by Andre Borges, a content creator, to unpack NRC, CAA, and how it's going to affect our country. On the Geek Fruit podcast, Tejas, Dinkar, and Jishnu talk about the best things according to them in pop culture from the 2010s. On the Habit Coach, Ashton talks about the fear of failure and how it's fine to fail. On Tapri Tales, Madhuri talks about the characters and gullies in her hometown Baroda in Gujarat as she tells us a story about his past and his present. On Ganatantra, hosts Saryu and Alok speak to Jean Thomas Martelli, who is writing a book on the Jawaharlal Nehru University and how a university becomes a hub of political activity. On Football Shitball, hosts Gaurav, Karthik, and Sivran celebrate the New Year episode and talk about the last week in football. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
Welcome back, everyone, from that break. And this is still the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. And guys, last week we spoke to Dennis Friedman, possibly India's least loved Australian in some ways. And this week we've gone with the polar opposite, and we have with us India's most loved Australian. Formerly of ESPN Cricinfo and Polite Inquiries fame, and now a freelance cricket journalist. All the way from Sydney, we have Mel Farrell. Welcome to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, Mel.
Thank you. I'm really not sure if I'm India's most loved Australian. I'm sure there are some cricketers out there who might score just a little bit higher than me, but I appreciate you giving me that rap anyway.
Now, we're absolutely delighted to have you on the podcast. And while you need no introduction for any of our listeners, could you tell them maybe a little bit about yourself? And I only ask because while I was researching for this show, I literally found nothing about you on the internet and your backstory. So give us your backstory, man.
Do you know what though? There are a bunch of sites out there that I've discovered which are hilarious that are like fake Wikipedia pages. And they've got all this information on everything from my measurements to my love life to all sorts of things. And they're actually just full of fake information. It's really amazing. So if anyone wants to find out any fake information about me, there is a load out there. So very amusing. Apparently I'm like a multi-millionaire and own several cars and all of this. I only wish it were true. But it'd be great. And I'd just give it all away. But I mean, I guess for cricket fans, if they follow cricket keenly especially on ESPN Cricinfo, that's probably where most people would have seen some of my work, hopefully, which has been great. That's sort of been the last 5.5 years of my life has been following cricket for Cricinfo. But I sort of got into cricket reporting just from being a sports reporter in general, working in TV production and then reporting on sports, mostly rugby league and cricket. The two of them sort of work in tandem in Australia. Rugby league is a winter sport. Cricket is an Australian sport. So I was freelance then, so you sort of have to do something all year round. So I probably worked on those two sports most before really concentrating on cricket, and that just became a bigger part. And then I was, lucky. I say lucky enough to get the job at Cricinfo. I had to take quite a big risk to get it, you might say. I was freelancing. I'd actually taken a job with Cricket Australia for 3 months when they started cricket.com.au. And that really was not for me. And I left 3 months into a 2-year contract because I just didn't enjoy being there. And I was freelance looking for work. I'd met Cricinfo journalists and I was having backwards and forwards, trying to get hold of their editor, Sandpaper-gate. I was not having much luck getting him to reply to emails. So eventually I decided I just had to put it all on the line. So I took all the money that I didn't have, which was a lot. I didn't have a lot of money. So I took all of that and I flew to England and I managed to scrape up enough work covering the England-India women's series that was on at the time. And basically just managed to work for whoever I could. And the whole thing was basically designed, the entire trip, so that I could be at the England v India test, the fourth test on day 3 at the Oval, because I knew Sambit was going to be there. And I figured that he could not avoid me and he couldn't avoid answering any of my questions or giving me a shot if I was standing in front of him. And you know what? It worked. Within about 24 hours, we shook hands and I had a job. So there you go. I actually have the India cricket team, men's and women's cricket team, to thank for the fact that I ended up getting that job.
There you have it, everyone. You heard it first over here. But that's an incredible story, Mel. And I mean, did you just hang out near the media box or something, just waiting for somebody to walk out, or were you in the box? I mean, it's a great story for people like us who kind of on the outside looking in. So keen to have your insight on that.
No, I had, because I'd met, you no doubt know my colleagues Jared and George. I'd met them on the 13-14 Ashes tour, which is when I was with Cricket Australia. And they had been sort of helping me put my case for why they needed to give me a job, obviously. And so they'd organised accreditation for me for that day to be there. So, I was sat outside in the overflow area at the Oval where we like to, but we just knew that Sambit was going to be there on that day. So I went there, and I think George and Jared sort of did what they could to help my case as well. And I just sat up the back there with Sambit and we had a chat about things, and that really got the ball rolling. So the job didn't actually exist there. So they had to do some sort of manoeuvring of, how things work with funds and finances and everything else to just try and work it out. So in the end, I ended up with a job that meant that I was working some part of the year in England, part of the year in Australia, and then, doing what else. So I've spent quite a bit of time in India in the past few years as well. So, yeah, it's I guess people always say, oh, you're so lucky to have this job. And yes, I am very, very lucky and very fortunate. But you make your own luck.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic story. And so we have Jared and George to thank for this. So I won't ask you the question about choosing between the two of them as your favorite cricket writer. So we're not going to ask you that question to put you in an awkward position. But Mel, I hate to say this, but when we contacted you, India had just been thrashed by 10 wickets. So we contacted you saying we'd like to do a wrap of the India-Australia series and all of that stuff. And we just lost possibly one of the worst games we'd ever played. But now India has just won the ODI series 2-1, chasing 287, and we've just spent half an hour discussing the series amongst ourselves. What are your thoughts on this slightly acontextual ODI series? And you had runs from Warner, Finch, yet Australia ended up on the losing side. So keen to hear from you on, did you get a chance to watch many of the games?
Yeah, you're right. It is in that it's a very acontextual series. It seems really weird. I can't remember all my years of being an Australian cricket fan and being, even being a kid. I can't remember Australia at the height of summer playing a series somewhere else. It's a real waste of the small period, the few months that cricket has to be on all the back pages. It's competing with the Australian Open right now with tennis. So to have the national team overseas, it doesn't do really the game any favours here. And I mean, Cricket Australia, obviously, they've tried to get out of this sort of quid pro quo that they made with India, and they haven't been able to. I don't think that they would like to get themselves into a negotiating position again where they've had to do this, because it just sort of takes a wind out of the sails and the momentum of the, Pakistan, New Zealand wins, and then all of a sudden the national team's elsewhere. So, that's probably not ideal. But Australia as a one-day team, I find really confusing. Before the World Cup, I didn't think they would go all the way because it felt to me that they sort of played a bit of an old-fashioned, if you like, way one-day cricket. Since 2015, a number of the teams have moved on, particularly, England and New Zealand, and then I think India was going along with that. Have gone away from that whole, try and get some runs in the power play, then build your innings, keep wickets in hand, and then go big in the last 10 overs. Then the game's really moved away from that a lot, and I didn't feel Australia really had. And now it's hard to work them out. It's like they've got plan A, which is Warner, certainly for the batting, Warner and Finch going big as they did in the first game. And if that doesn't work, then what's below? Because they seem to have a lot of batters who will get them kind of around about a run a ball 100. They can get 100, but it'll be about a run a ball. They don't score that quickly. They don't seem to have the explosive power to really come in and elevate the run rate, no matter which part of the innings they're in. Although Alex Carey, I think he's more likely to be that player a bit. So it's a confusing side. At the end of the day, well, if you question the whole series in that one-day cricket at the moment is probably the least relevant of the limited overs formats because everything now is really gearing towards that T20 World Cup, or it should be anyway. So if teams want to win trophies, I think they have to be quite cyclical in how they look at focusing on cricket. So in the end, I don't think it matters. And perhaps Australia, though, still have to go away and look at just what their one day is team, because I have trouble sort of figuring out what it is if plan A doesn't come off in the batting, where is plan B? And it feels a little bit confused, and I don't know if it's a bit of an unbalanced side, and I don't know if they've got all the right troops there.
Interesting. You use the word firepower, and the person that comes to mind, obviously, is Glenn Maxwell.
How did I know you were going to say that?
And Marcus Stoinis, surprisingly, as well, who got 140-odd recently of 70-something. So where are those two boys? Why aren't they on that plane? Well, the trip's over, but should they have been on that plane?
Well, neither of them had great World Cups. I think maybe that helped. But look, I think Glenn Maxwell has had issues. He's been, I think, quite bravely honest publicly about, some struggles with mental health issues. So he wanted to have a break. He's come back to the Big Bash, and he's actually been doing brilliantly in the Big Bash, and having captaincy role, he's been relishing that, and he seems to be in a pretty good space since he came back. So I'd sort of argue why push him out of that where he's in a good spot right now, and he's playing T20 cricket, which is the form that he's going to most likely be called on to perform for Australia this year. Why take him out of that for this series in India? And I don't really see a problem with that. He might not have felt quite ready to actually go, have the stress of going overseas and a wham bam travelling all over the place tour right now. So, I think we'll see Glenn Maxwell back, and I certainly hope so, because I'm a big fan. And if you're at the point where Australia are promoting Mitchell Starc to come in up the batting order, that's probably a sign that they could do with a little bit more batting firepower. Imagine if they'd had Maxwell to come in at that point of the game, it probably would have been a little bit more concerning for India's bowlers whether or not it succeeded. So I think Stoinis is probably there and thereabouts as well, sort of competing with those people in that sort of middle order all-rounder role. But yeah, it's just not. It's not one where you look and go, right, that's the team, and we know that that's a proven team to work with. They've just not been able to really fit that around, and sometimes when they've brought those players in, they haven't necessarily performed. I'd give Maxwell a go anytime, because I just think he's the sort of player you could have in a Joss Butler role. He's not going to come off every time. We know that. There'll be time when he'll frustrate the hell out of people and it'll look ugly when he gets out. He's the kind of player that the opposition is probably going to be a bit more wary of, just because they know that he could come in and potentially take a game away from you in just a few overs.
Yeah, absolutely. And being the opposition, I know India would probably have to make more plans, knowing that Maxi would be in the hut. So he would be somebody they would potentially be planning for ahead of the game. But speaking of opposition and rivalry, Mel, how big a rivalry is India versus Australia? I know we talk a lot about the Ashes, the old enemy, England, Australia, but is India versus Australia kind of becoming the biggest rivalry we have in world cricket? And part of that question is, how much cricket are we playing against each other? We were there last year. We've just played a ODI series. There'll be a World T20 in Australia, which India will be playing in, and then we'll be back again over the summer for 4 tests and some ODIs and some T20s, presumably. So I guess the question is, are we killing the golden goose, the India-Australia golden goose?
Well, I suppose that's really going to be for fans to decide. If fans still want to watch these two sides play, look, I suspect that if they play, fans probably will tune in and they probably will go. But if it does get a bit boring, and I say this as someone who I get a bit bored of England, Australia as well. I actually love doing series, working on and watching series that involve other countries, just because it's a bit fresh and you don't necessarily know what to expect, and there are matchups that you haven't seen. Even the New Zealand series in Australia, the Test series, it was a disappointing one for England, but for New Zealand, sorry. But the sort of anticipation, a lot of those players hadn't really played much at all in Australia. Some of them never. So there's a little bit of uncertainty surrounding that, and challenges for players and new people to talk about and look at. And I guess that's just me talking as someone who covers it. So no one really cares what I think when it comes to something like that. It ends up just being what do the fans want. It does worry, of course. I think the bigger picture in other teams not getting a run against the teams who are richer, the boards who are richer, and this is why you've seen the whole idea of 4-day tests perhaps being supported in particular by countries who don't have as much money, because just in general we know that the wealth is very uneven around cricket, and that's a big part of that is because the Indian TV audience in particular just brings that in. So I don't know. I'm a little bit. I'd love to see it shared around a bit more, that's just me, because I want to see cricket strong worldwide. I don't want to just see India and England and Australia play each other, and for it to get to the point where they're the only teams that make money playing each other. You know, it is a big rivalry, and it's probably gained a bit more now after India winning in Australia last summer. That gives it next summer's series, you know, a bit more bite. But do we all really want to see India and Australia play every second summer in Australia? I don't think that would be great for the game overall. I think, you know, tours should be special, and that's have something to anticipate new players coming in, not just the same teams. I think, you know, Australia will probably be quite similar to last time, the last squad that played when India were here, except for the return of Smith and Warner.
Yeah, just those two small additions to an Australian team. But it's exactly what you said, Mel. It's being special, and tours should be special, wins should be special. I would have personally liked to see India have that trophy for a little longer. If they could have held off the series for another year or maybe even 2 years, where you have a cycle of 4 years between tours to Australia or tours to England. Putting that to one side, how has the perception of India changed over the years, do you think, Mel? I mean, you've been covering the game for a while now. You've obviously been watching it for a long time. Were India considered at one point a little bit soft? And is there more respect now? When did that change? Was it the Dravid Tendulkar era, or was it the Kohli era, where things have kind of changed in the relationship between India and Australia?
Yeah, I certainly have never really thought of India as being soft. I think certainly under Kohli and even before that, but Kohli's really stamped his authority in many ways on that team, which an Indian captain obviously can do, but it just seems a bit more now sort of ruthlessly efficient, and the fitness and like the fast bowlers that India are producing, everything just does seem very tough.
Sounds
and very
quite
ruthless.
Australian, doesn't it? In some ways, he's grown up watching them dominate.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, I really loved seeing the fast bowlers who are coming through. Who can't love Jasprit Bumrah? He's like a little puppy who bounds around, you know, and he bounds around like smiling and looking like he can't quite believe he's there. He's absolutely joyful to watch. And I'm a big fan of Shami as well. I think he's a really, really canny, smart bowler, and well, we saw that in the last ODI, didn't we? But they've got some really exciting options now, and it feels like it's perhaps just a rounded, tough Indian side that I think can go through a real period of dominance if they can win away more often. I do think it would have been interesting to see that series last year if Smith and Warner had played. And I say that not being one, I don't like saying, oh, the result would have been different, because no one can actually say that. India may have won that series anyway. But that will make, even though it's, you know, because series coming around a bit soon, that will make next summer quite interesting if Australia are back to their best, because Smith and now the amazing way that Marnus Labuschagne has developed in the past 7 or 8 months, that's going to be really interesting to see how India will go about breaking the partnership between those two players, because they seem to just be joined at the hip, whether they're on or off the pitch, and a real force as a partnership at the moment in Test cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like this series for this year has been organised because you'd have Smith and Warner back, so that little asterisk could be removed from India's 2-1 win last year. But speaking of Steve Smith, this week the ICC awarded the Spirit of Cricket Award to Kohli for his gesture at the 50-over World Cup at the Oval when India played Australia. If you remember, the crowd was booing Steve Smith, and the mostly Indian crowd, I was in the crowd as well, mostly Indian crowd was booing Steve Smith, and Kohli told them not to boo him, but to cheer his own team, which I thought was just a fantastic gesture. It was quite a good PR move for Kohli as well, but frankly, I never thought Virat Kohli would win the Spirit of Cricket award in my lifetime, but it has happened. And I'd be keen to hear what you think of that, because obviously you know these guys, you've kind of interviewed them, brushed shoulders with them, so keen to hear your thoughts on that.
I just dare you to tweet out that Kohli shouldn't get the Spirit of Cricket award, because I'd love to see what rains down on him then.
Well, actually, we did, and we get away with it because we're an Indian cricket podcast. So we said I always knew Kohli would win a Spirit of Cricket award, of course. So I mean, it is amazing what you can get away with sometimes.
Well, I was there for that match as well, and I thought it was all class. I mean, Kohli's a man who knows his power with the crowd. He's had an interesting relationship with the crowd probably over the years. He's had good and bad moments with home and away crowds, but I think he probably summed up that situation pretty well and knew what was happening. And I just thought that was a pretty classy thing to do. He was certainly not obliged to do it, and other teams probably, team captains maybe wouldn't have done it, but he made the decision that he thought was right in that moment and followed through on it, and you sort of can't really say much more than that. And from my understanding, in the last ODI, from people who were there, you had that moment where the crowd was yelling for Dhoni, 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 and Kohli, from a few tweets and observers that I know who were there, it was Kohli sort of admonishing the crowd that made them start to chant Rahul, Rahul, Rahul. So it's something that he knows. He understands his power now, and the influence that he can have. And obviously he's not perfect, and he has his moments where he might let fly and perhaps not show as much of this nebulous spirit of cricket that we talk about. But I think there are lots of times he does, and so good on him for getting that award. I think we spend a bit too much time talking about spirit of cricket at times when you're talking about rules or laws of the game and what should or shouldn't happen. But in this case, it is much more about just good sportsmanship, and that's something that certainly the game could use plenty of.
Absolutely, and you know that famous saying from the movie Spider-Man, along with great power comes great responsibility. And Kohli's obviously watched Spider-Man a few times, but obviously there's a great respect between those two batsmen. I mean, Smith and Kohli obviously respect each other. They've had their they've had their clashes on field, or off field, as the case might have been in the DRS kerfuffle. But there's obviously great respect between those two batsmen and those two great competitors. So I thought it was a great gesture. India came out looking really good there. Kohli came out looking really good there as well. But given that we're speaking of the spirit of cricket, and Mel, I'm really sorry to have to do this, but it is a mandatory question whenever we speak to an Australian cricketer, commentator, fan. And you're probably sick of this question, but has Australia as a cricketing nation finally put Sandpaper-gate behind it?
I think it will be, in some ways, an ongoing thing. In many ways, fans are pretty slow to let go of things. In case you haven't noticed, in cricket, New Zealand will always be able to bring up the underarm incident. There are others as well.
Or the boundary count back now, so they've got a new thing to be annoyed about. Poor guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So that will go on for at least another 30 years. So I think fans are pretty slow to let go of these things, certainly in Australia. I think Tim Payne has done an excellent job. I mean, he was given a pretty difficult job to do when he took on the side in that moment, in those circumstances. It had all fallen apart. Like it was an absolute shambles in Australia as far as the way that team was seen, the way the culture was seen, the culture review that came on. And I think overall Tim Payne has done a really good job of leading. Steve Smith, while being a brilliant batter, was maybe not the leader that Australian side needed at that time, simply because of all the influences that were around it. Where you've got new influences now, you've got a lot of new people, and Tim Paine's been the public face of a lot of that. And overall, I think he's done, a pretty good job. I think there are always going to be moments, and Australia's sort of had to, I guess, juggle the whole we're going to be really hard and have this edge, but we are also not going to be really awful people. There's sort of maybe still a bit of a working out of how they do that, and that's probably going to be ongoing and, may change more as new players come in. So, yeah, I think a fair bit of credit would go to Tim Paine, and just even being the public face of that. It's definitely worked in Australia. I think there's a lot of forgiveness for Steve Smith in particular, and even Dave Warner. So I think the Australian public won't hang on to that so much, any grudges. Whether that still follows them overseas, we'll see. I think it'll fade personally for those players. For the Australian team, anytime, and it will happen, that they sort of fall off the straight and narrow and there's some sort of incident, it will come back. Everyone will mention it and say they haven't changed. That's how I reckon it will happen overseas.
Yeah, and let's see. I mean, it's a proud cricketing nation. They have fallen from grace a little bit, but they are building their way back to the top again. And it's good to see. I mean, it was great to see Smith score all those runs at Edgbaston. It's a feel-good story, and it's nice. And you can see the perception has changed already, and it's only likely to soften even further from here. But so Mel, I'm going to ask you two more questions, and they aren't going to be tough questions. But the first one is, what next for Mel? You've left Cricinfo, you've gone freelance. So what are you going to be doing? You've been travelling around the world covering cricket, or are you going to look into other sports? Or what else are you going to be up to?
No, I'm very much going to be staying with cricket. I'm probably, for me, a lot of things don't change. I'll still be going and spending the English summer in England and the Australian summer in Australia, and hopefully going to a few other countries as well. That's something that I would definitely like to do more of, is to tour some other countries. So I would like to do that. The first big thing for me is the women's T20 World Cup. So I'm talking to various outlets at the moment, and hopefully we'll nail down a number of things this week. So it's quite funny when you're talking about tips for people who want to get into things. I would say, honestly, women's cricket still needs more coverage, because there are a lot of organisations out there who know that they should be covering it and want to cover it, but they don't have the budget to, send the sort of numbers of people that they might send to the men's World Cup. So there are real opportunities to cover the game, and I'm not saying that in a way that people should use the women's game to try and sort of get ahead. But there are just opportunities to cover cricket, and that's how I look at women's cricket. It's just cricket. So you get in to cover cricket that's entertaining and competitive, and that's sort of, I think, one area where people can get a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. That's how I first started commentating, was on women's cricket, thrown in the deep end on the first time Cricket Australia decided they would try streaming. And that's how I, first got to go with that. That's the first tour I did, was scraping together enough work to cover Australia in England and then India in England when I got the Cricinfo job. So that's a real area, I think, where there's a lot of scope, as long as you approach it in the best possible spirit and say, I'm here to cover cricket and enjoy it. And I think people become more invested in it as well as the game grows. So for me, that's going to be a big one, and I think it's going to be huge. They've set the bar high for selling out the MCG for the final. Whether that happens remains to be seen, but it's great that they're doing that. And so from after that series, I'll be heading back to England, but possibly via Sri Lanka for a couple of tests that England are playing there. And from there, it's really just going and covering things where I'm going to get enough work to make it worthwhile for me to be there. So it's a little bit scary, but also exciting as well. And I'm, very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, sounds really exciting, actually, Mel. And it's interesting you brought up the women's T20. We've got a few things in the fire as well, so we're just waiting to hear back from people. So hopefully we can lock that down as well. Of course, it is a premier tournament, and we would love to be involved with that stuff. So fingers crossed. Let's see how that goes. The other question was actually, Mel, we'd like you to recommend, because you're a fantastic cricket writer, right? And we really like reading your stuff. Obviously, you've worked with some of the best cricket writers in the business. Would you recommend a particular piece of writing that our listeners could go and have a read of? We'll put a link in the show notes later. But is there a particular piece of writing that's really struck home with you?
That someone else has written?
Yes, absolutely. Or yourself as well. I mean, I read something from Jared Kimber yesterday about Kate McGregor, and it was just absolutely fantastic. And I mean, something like that, or even a piece that you've written yourself.
So you have put me on the spot here when it comes to reading a piece. I'll tell you what, if there's a great piece that Jared wrote for Cricket Monthly. That's just a really amazing story on I don't have the link, but he wrote it about an Afghanistan player who ended up moving to America and meeting up with a man who built his own cricket pitch. It's a really incredible story that it's a long read, but I know Jared put a lot of work into that. So maybe if people go and Google something like Jared Kimber, Afghanistan Cricket America.
Is it called the Shahid Afridi of Kansas?
That's it. Yes. The Shahid Afridi of Kansas. Well done.
Quick Google fingers. Well, okay, we'll put a link to that. Jared's obviously a fantastic writer, but of course you should give us one of your own as well, because I think people know you already. But I think we should have a plug there as well. Go on. Your favourite piece of writing?
That's a bit hard to say. Because I don't think I've ever written the perfect piece. But look, certainly one that I did spend a lot of time on. It was my first really big long read. Was probably the profile I did on Owen Morgan before the World Cup. It was a really good choice in the end, because it ended up being about the World Cup winning captain. And he hadn't really, no one had really done a big in-depth piece on him, and he was really generous. That we sat down for the videos and the written piece. It was 3 or 4 hours that we ended up sitting down over a few sort of sessions. So that was really generous of him to give me that time and be willing to sort of go back and talk over things. And I went over to Ireland and met his old principal and sort of walked around where he went to school. So so I invested quite a lot into that piece. It was about 23,000 words just of transcribing interviews. So that's the sort of work that goes into something like that. It took me a couple of weeks just transcribing. So yeah, that's probably one that I invested the most amount of time in, and really enjoyed the process and the generosity of Owen in doing something like that. So yeah, some of those long form pieces, you have time to dive in a bit deeper, really good. Then other times, it's something that you just almost vomit out at the end of a match, which may end up sort of capturing the feelings and emotions. So writing's a funny thing like that.
And this is called The Irishman Who Became Captain of England. It also has baby pictures of Owen Morgan. So I really did enjoy that. I actually remember reading this before the World Cup. So we'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. But Mel, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I know we've had some technological challenges along the way as well. So thank you for your patience with those too. But yes, and if you want to let our listeners know where they can find you on Twitter, Facebook, etc., now is the time.
Oh, well, please do find me at Melinda Farrell. There you go. Very easy. On Twitter. Always talking absolute nonsense But yeah, try to interact with as many people as I can and keep Twitter nice. That's my sort of philosophy.
Or you get blocked.
No, I try to be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Mel, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and good luck. And hopefully when you're in London, we'll get to meet. Thanks again.
Yes, absolutely. Beers on you.
Absolutely. Cheers, Mel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, DJ.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Mel. Bye. There you have it, guys. A fantastic India-Australia insight by Mel Farrell. It was really good speaking to her. And that is a wrap on this week's show. We've had the India-Australia ODI series. India have made an incredible comeback, showing some fantastic character coming back from that 10-wicket loss. We've discussed it threadbare. We've talked about everything there was to talk about. We've also got an insight from Mel Farrell on the Australian side of things. So guys, do write in, leave us a comment. We're on Facebook at One Tip One Hand. We're on Twitter at One Tip One Hand. We're on Instagram at One Tip One Hand. We're on iTunes, Spotify, CastBox, Acast, Pocket Cast, wherever you can find podcasts. We're obviously on the IVM podcast app. And thanks to the folks there for doing all the work behind the scenes, getting this edited up, putting it out in time, doing all the promotion stuff for it. So thanks again to the IVM team for that. And guys, write in on email. We're on contact@onetiponehand.com. Tell us what you think about the show. Leave us a rating. Tell your friends about the show. That's how we grow. We're now at 93 episodes. It's been a fantastic kind of journey for the three of us. We've really enjoyed doing the show. And so, yeah, we will see you next week. India will be off to New Zealand in this kind of never-ending saga of Indian cricket. So we'll be there to cover that. Well, we won't be in New Zealand to cover that, but we'll be covering that from here. So, guys, join us next week and take care. See you soon.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुटबॉल.
Presenting Football Shortball, a show about three friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes three, maybe even five. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my two sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthika here.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Ha, just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Ayer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumours, top controversies, fantasy football picks and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Shootball every Wednesday on the IVM podcast app, website or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.